I passed out at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon, and the next thing I remember is the sound of a machine beeping somewhere to my left and a light so bright it made my eyes water. I didn't know where I was for a good 30 seconds. Then the smell hit me. That specific hospital smell, like cleaning solution and recycled air, and everything clicked into place. Except it didn't, not really, because when I turned my head and looked around the room, there was nobody there. No one. Just me, an IV line running into my arm, and a window showing a gray November sky. I'd been working double shifts at the accounting firm for almost 4 years straight. Not because I loved it. I mean, I liked my job fine, but nobody loves reconciling quarterly reports at 11 p.m. I did it because every month, like clockwork, my phone would ring, and it would be my mom, or my brother, or sometimes both of them together on speaker like some kind of tag team. And the story was always a little different, but the ask was always the same. The transmission went out on my brother's truck. Mom's dental bill came in higher than expected. The HOA sent a fine. The electricity got shut off because someone forgot to pay it. Could I help? Just this once. I'd get it back, they always said that. I'd get it back. They always said that. I never got it back. I was 28 years old and I had $400 in my savings account. I want you to understand what that means for someone pulling in $63,000 a year in a mid-sized city. It means every single surplus dollar was going somewhere that wasn't me. No emergency fund, no retirement contributions beyond the minimum to get the company match. I ate lunch at my desk most days because buying a sandwich from the place downstairs felt irresponsible given everything else I was covering. My brother was 24 and had never held a job for more than 5 months. He surfed, genuinely, legitimately surfed, drove 3 hours to the coast on weekends, and talked a lot about one day becoming a sponsored athlete. My mom thought this was a wonderful goal. She thought everything my brother did was wonderful. She used to introduce me at family gatherings as my daughter, the one who works in finance, with this tone that managed to make it sound both impressive and vaguely disappointing, like I had chosen a practical path instead of a meaningful one. My brother she introduced as my free spirit. She said it with actual warmth. My stepfather was fine. Quiet. He worked part-time at a hardware store and mostly stayed out of things. He wasn't the problem. He also wasn't a solution. The day I passed out, I had been awake for 22 hours. I know that because I had started a time log on my phone a few weeks earlier. My therapist had suggested it. She was worried about me and I was trying to show her I had things under control. The log showed I'd clocked in at 6:15 in the morning, skipped lunch, worked through what should have been my dinner break to finish a client audit, and was in the middle of formatting a presentation for the next morning's meeting, when my vision went strange and then went away entirely. A colleague found me on the floor. She told me later that I had hit my head on the edge of the desk on the way down, which explained the bandage I woke up with. She rode with me in the ambulance. She's the one who called my mom. I know she called my mom because she told me she did, and because my mom answered, and because my mom said she'd be there. She was not there. When I was lucid enough to ask a nurse what day it was, she told me it was Wednesday. I had been unconscious for almost 18 hours. A subdural hematoma, the doctor explained. Bleeding on the brain from the fall. Minor, as these things go, but serious enough to require monitoring. Serious enough that if my colleague hadn't found me when she did, if I'd been alone, the outcome could have been very different. I asked the nurse if anyone had come. She checked something at her station, and then she looked at me with this careful expression that nurses must practice. The one that's kind but doesn't give anything away. "We'll talk about visitors when you're feeling more settled," she said. That told me everything I needed to know. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just lay there looking at the ceiling and feeling something settle into place in my chest, something cold and very, very still, like a lake in January, like finally understanding the answer to a question you'd been afraid to ask. My mom called on day 3. I was sitting up by then, eating actual food, starting to feel like a person again. My phone lit up and I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment before I answered. "Sweetheart," she said, and her voice had that particular texture it got when she was performing concern. "How are you feeling? We've been so worried." I asked where she was. A pause. "Well, that's actually, Reed already paid for everything. You know how it is with non-refundable bookings, and your brother, the trip was really important for him. There was a regional competition, and this might be a real opportunity for his career." "Where are you, Mom?" Another pause. We're in Cabo. We flew out Sunday. She went to Cabo. My brother had a surf competition in Cabo San Lucas, and my mom and stepfather had paid, with what money I genuinely didn't know, though I had my suspicions, to go watch him. While I was in the ICU with a bleed on my brain, they were watching my brother ride waves in Mexico. I told her I had to go. She said she'd call again soon. She said she loved me. I put the phone down and looked at the ceiling again, and that cold stillness in my chest got a little colder, a little stiller. What I didn't tell her, what I was still trying to process myself, was that someone had been there. Every night since I'd been admitted, according to the nursing staff, a visitor had come. Not during visiting hours. After. He had apparently spoken to my attending physician, explained his concern, and been allowed to sit in the chair beside my bed for a couple of hours at a time. He had asked questions, not demanding questions, careful ones, about my prognosis and recovery timeline. He had left flowers once, plain white ones, the kind that don't look like they came from a hospital gift shop. One of the night nurses told me he had just sat there mostly, reading sometimes, watching to make sure my breathing was steady. His name, according to the visitor log, was Richard Holt. I'd not heard that name in over 20 years. My mom left my biological father when I was 5. She's never talked about why, not really. Just vague references to incompatibility, to him being difficult, to needing a fresh start. She married my stepfather when I was 8. She was very deliberate about never discussing my father at all, to the point that when I was a teenager and started asking questions, she would physically leave the room. His name was not spoken in our house. I had no photos. I had one memory, which I was never fully sure was real. A tall man with dark hair lifting me up to touch the leaves of a tree, laughing at something I'd said. I had looked him up once when I was about 19, found a LinkedIn profile. He was an engineer, lived 2 states away, had worked for the same infrastructure company for many years. I stared at his profile photo for a long time, trying to find my own face in his, and then I closed the tab and didn't go back. I didn't know how he had found out I was in the hospital. I didn't know how he had known which hospital. I lay in that bed with my bandaged head and the IV in my arm, and I turned it over and over in my mind. This fact that a man my mother had erased from my life had driven. He drove, I'd find out later, 6 hours each way, to sit beside me in the dark while I was unconscious, while she was watching my brother compete in a surf competition in Mexico. On day 5, he came while I was awake. I heard a quiet knock on the open door and looked up, and there was a man in his early 60s standing in the doorway, tall, with dark hair gone mostly gray, and I knew him immediately. Not from memory, from the LinkedIn photo I'd stared at for 20 minutes and pretended I hadn't. He was holding a paper coffee cup in each hand, and he looked almost as uncertain as I felt. "I wasn't sure you'd want to see me," he said. "I can go, I wanted to check on you myself." I told him he could come in. He sat down in the chair by the bed, the same chair he'd apparently been sitting in every night, and he handed me one of the coffees, and then he said, "I know I don't have any right to be here. I know I've missed everything. I just couldn't not come when I heard." I asked how he heard. He told me my colleague, the one who had found me on the floor, who had ridden in the ambulance, had found him. She had looked through my emergency contacts and found nothing useful. She had then done what apparently people do now when they want to find someone, which is search online. She had found the name of my biological father in an old public record, and she had tracked down his number, and she had called him because there was nobody else to call. He had gotten in his car within the hour. We talked for almost 3 hours that first conversation. I did most of the listening. He told me what happened, his version anyway, and I'm aware there are always versions, and some of it I'd suspected and some of it I hadn't. He didn't ask me for anything. He didn't make promises. He said he understood if I never wanted to see him again after I was discharged, and he said he would respect that completely, but that he needed me to know he was sorry for how long he'd been absent, whether that was entirely his choice or not. "Your mother made it very difficult," he said carefully. "That's not an excuse. I could have tried harder. I should have tried harder. I should have tried harder. I think about that." He left at 9 o'clock. He said he'd come back the next day if that was all right with me. I said it was. My mom came back from Cabo on day 10. I want to be accurate about that timeline because it still takes my breath away a little. 10 days. I was in the ICU for the first 4. then moved to a regular room, then moved to a step-down unit as they evaluated me for discharge. 10 days, and she was there for 0 of them. She arrived at the hospital on a Tuesday morning, rolling a carry-on suitcase and wearing a light tan from 10 days of Mexican sun. She had a balloon, one of those miler get-well-soon balloons, and she was carrying a small gift bag. She had clearly stopped somewhere between the airport and the hospital to buy these things. I noticed that detail. She hugged me and told me I looked good, and then started talking about the trip, about my brother's performance in the competition. He placed 6th, she said, which given the competition level was actually very respectable. And I let her talk for a while because I was watching her. Really watching her, noticing the way she moved through the room like she belonged in it, like she was the one who'd been here the whole time and this was just a continuation of something she'd been part of. After a few minutes, she picked up the clipboard from the bedside table, the one that had some of my chart information on it, and started flipping through it. Old habit of hers, needing to be in charge of information. Then she set it down and glanced around the room, and her eye landed on the side table. There were flowers there. White ones, fresh. My father had brought a new bunch 2 days ago, and next to the flowers there was the visitor log. It was just a standard hospital document, a printed sheet where visitors sign in and out with their name and time. The nursing staff had explained to me at some point that they were keeping one for my room specifically because of some early confusion about who was authorized to receive my medical updates. My mom picked it up the way she picked up everything, with that automatic assumption that she was entitled to whatever information was in front of her. I watched her eyes move down the page. I watched them stop. I watched the color leave her face. It's hard to describe exactly what happened to her expression. It was like watching something structural fail. Not dramatically, not all at once, but that specific kind of collapse where you can see the thing holding it together just give out. Her mouth opened and then closed. She looked at the log and then she looked at me, and her eyes were doing something I had never seen them do before. Actual fear, not anger, not manipulation. Fear. How did he? She started. He came every night, I said, while you were in Cabo. She set the log down very carefully. She opened her mouth twice before anything came out, and when it did, it was an explanation, the beginning of one, something about the history, about how complicated it was, about things I didn't understand. I understand fine, I said. I've spent the last 10 days understanding a lot of things. She stayed for another 40 minutes. They were uncomfortable in a way that felt important, like discomfort that needed to happen. She asked at one point if I was planning to have a relationship with him. I told her that was my decision to make. She said she hoped I'd consider how this would affect the family. I thought about the words, the family, and what they had meant in my life, practically speaking, and what they had cost me. And I didn't say anything. After she left, I sat in the quiet of my room and thought about something my father had said a few days earlier. We had been talking about my job and about the burnout that had clearly been building for years. And he had said, you know, you don't have to keep running at this pace to be worth something, right? The pace you're keeping. It's like you're trying to justify your existence. Nobody should have to do that. I'd never heard anyone say that to me before. I had never even thought it in those words. But the moment he said it, I recognized it as true. I had been trying to justify my existence to a family that had made it clear from the time I was very young that my value was in my usefulness. My brother had value by being loved. I had value by being needed. There's a difference, and it had taken me until a hospital bed with a bandage on my head to see it clearly. I was discharged on a Thursday. My father drove me home. He carried my bag up to my apartment door and stood in the hallway and said he'd like to stay in touch if I was open to it. No pressure. Whatever pace worked for me. I'd like that, I said. He nodded. He looked relieved in a way that seemed very genuine. He gave me his number. I already had it, but I saved it again, properly this time, with his name in my contacts, and then he left. I went inside and sat down on my couch for a long time. My apartment was quiet. It was a nice quiet, actually. The kind that comes from being somewhere you chose for yourself. About a week after I got home, I called my mom. I'd been thinking about what I wanted to say, and I wanted to say it when I was calm, not sharp, not running on adrenaline and hospital room emotion. I told her I was done being the financial safety net. Done. Not reduced, not renegotiated. Done. I told her that I had been transferring somewhere between $800 and $1,400 a month to cover family expenses for 4 years, and that this was ending effective immediately, and that if she wanted to talk about what that meant for their budget, I would have that conversation once, but I would not be negotiating. She said that was very cold of me given everything she'd done for me. I asked her what she'd done for me. The silence that followed that question was the most honest thing she'd said to me in years. I didn't cut off contact entirely, not right away. Some people do, and that's valid. For me, it was more of a slow restructuring, fewer calls, clearer limits, a lot less guilt when I said no to something. I started a real emergency fund. I signed up for my company's full 401k contribution for the first time. I bought myself lunch from the place downstairs, and I ate it sitting in the sun outside the building, and it tasted extraordinary. My brother called about 2 months later to ask if I could help cover a registration fee for another competition. I told him no. He said he thought family was supposed to support each other. I told him I agreed, and that I hoped he found that support, and I wished him genuinely good luck, and I hung up. My father and I have dinner once a month now. We've been doing it for 7 months. There are still things between us that are awkward, history that needs more time, conversations we're working up to. But he shows up. He's shown up every single time, and sometimes when we're sitting across from each other at some ordinary restaurant splitting an appetizer and talking about something mundane, I look at him and I think about that hospital room, about the white flowers and the visitor log and 6 hours of driving each way for a daughter he hadn't seen in over 20 years, and I think some people show you who they are when it's easy, and some people show you who they are when it's easy, and some people show you who they are when it costs them something. I know which kind I want in my life now, and I finally know how to let go of the rest. There's a moment I keep coming back to, not the one in the hospital room, not the visitor log, not my mother's face going pale. It's the one before all of that, me at my desk at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night, formatting a presentation nobody thanked me for, running on 4 hours of sleep and a protein bar I'd eaten standing up over the sink. That was the moment everything was already decided, even if I didn't know it yet. The body keeps score in ways the mind refuses to. Mine had been keeping score for 4 years. What I understand now, sitting on the other side of it, is that what happened to me wasn't really about the hospital or the trip or the visitor log. Those were just the moment the truth became impossible to look away from. The actual story had been building much longer, in every transfer I made without asking for it back, in every call I answered when I already knew what was coming, in every time I told myself that this was what family did. That sacrifice was love, that being needed was the same as being valued. I'd confused those things for so long that I'd stopped being able to tell them apart. The hard thing about waking up is that you can't unwake. Once I saw it clearly, that my worth to certain people was entirely transactional, that my exhaustion registered as inconvenient rather than concerning, that the right response to your daughter in the ICU is apparently a non-refundable booking. I couldn't arrange my understanding back into the shape it had been before, and I had to make a choice about what to do with that clarity. That choice was mine. Nobody could make it for me. I think about my father driving 6 hours in the dark to sit beside someone he hadn't seen in over 20 years. No announcement, no expectation of credit. He just came because he thought it was the right thing to do, and he kept coming back. That kind of integrity doesn't perform itself. It just shows up, quietly, in the places where showing up costs something real. And I think about myself. Finally, after 32 years of trying to earn my place in a family that had already decided my role, finally choosing not to. That wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. There's a version of strength that looks like enduring, and then there's a version that looks like stopping. Knowing which one the moment calls for, that's the harder skill and the more important one. None of this came easily. Setting limits with people who raised you, who know exactly which levers to pull, who can make guilt feel like love, that takes something you have to build deliberately. It's not a feeling. It's a decision you make over and over again, every time the phone rings, and you let it go to voicemail, every time you say no, and sit with the discomfort of having said it, every time you choose your own stability over someone else's emergency. That was never really an emergency at all. What I have now is quieter than what I had before. It's also mine. My savings account has an actual number in it. I eat lunch outside when the weather's good. I have dinner once a month with a man I'm still learning to know, and we're both patient about it, and that patience feels like something being built rather than something being managed. I don't know what fair looks like across a whole life. I'm not sure that's even the right question. What I know is that the people who show up when it costs them something are the people worth building a life around, and that understanding what you deserve, not demanding it, just understanding it, just holding it quietly in your chest as a true thing, changes everything about how you move through the world.